Next week, the provincial budget will be revealed. Last year's budget was a tough one, especially in education. Patrick Mays is the president of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me here. Yeah.
Last year, with $54 million in cuts, $23 million, according to school board reports, coming out of the classrooms, there was a little money going back in, but how have you been coping the last year?
Yeah, they announced $7.5 million to come back in, but the cuts have had dramatic impact in the classrooms. We know that there's higher class sizes and a lot of the influx of new students into Saskatchewan as well, 2,500 new students into Saskatchewan, and many of them are EAL, which English as additional language, which those students require more support than regular students who already speak English. So yeah, we're dealing with higher needs, more students, and fewer teachers. They also ended up divisions across the province cut 188 teaching positions. So we're doing more with less, and we're hoping that this budget can address that.
Tell me a little bit more about what you're hoping to see the government do to address that surplus of students with regards to fewer teachers.
Right. Well, I mean, just the regular cost of living is going up as well, but then an influx of new students. And so we're hoping, I mean, we hear that both the Premier and the Education Minister seem to understand that education is an investment into Saskatchewan's future. And so we're looking to hold them true to that promise and really see by the budget that education is an investment.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what teachers have now in terms of support.
Well, right now, I mean, it varies. The difficulty is class sizes have gone up, and we've had a number of educational assistants across the province cut. Different supports. They've tried to, as they've said, keep the cuts out of the classroom. However, the layers of support that are outside the classroom are also important. So, for example, Aboriginal support workers, retention workers that help to keep kids in the classroom, even though they're not direct classroom supports, they're still important to the education sector. So we know that there's a number of layers of supports to students that have been cut, and that's really unfortunate. And we would hope that this budget is able to address that and restore some of the cuts.
So clearly funding will be key for you, but if the money isn't there, how do you plan to adapt to doing the same thing with less resources?
Well, we can't, simply. I mean, it's quite simple that students will go underserved, and the level of education will suffer and the quality of education will suffer. So it's really a case of not being able to address any more cuts. It's just that students will suffer. So there'll be higher class sizes, which will mean that teachers won't be able to get around and talk to each student and assess and find out what students' needs are. And that's a real frustration for teachers, because we go home with a high work ethic, wanting to feel like we've made a difference at the end of the day. And when you go home and feel that, I never did get over to help that one student, or never did, that's a real source of frustration and anxiety for teachers. So yeah, we're hoping that the Premier is going to address the needs of the classroom, and that Saskatchewan students will benefit. We recognize that it's a tough budget, but at the same point, this is such an important investment into our future that we hope that they get to the right place.
What are you hearing from people about what they want to see in education?
Well, I think everybody has just, everybody's touched by the education system. So whether it's having actual children in the education system, or actually being a student in the system, or even a grandparent. I mean, grandparents want the best for their grandchildren as well. So, and then people who don't have children are often employers out there that benefit from a highly educated society as well. So we're hearing people say right across the board, from the Chambers of Commerce to universities, everybody wants a higher educated population and knows that education is important. And I think from hearing during the leadership campaign of the Sask Party, they seem to understand that education is a priority and an investment, and we're hoping that they make good on that next week.
There will be a lot of eyes watching what happens with education next week. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.